Now for all the elite athletes, they take you up in a very nice bus. They have special places for you and stuff. Back then, I jumped in the back end of a station wagon with a bunch of New Balance athletes and got up to Hopkinton. And Coach, a few days before, had gone out and knocking on doors and found a little old lady that had a house with an extra room and said, hey, my athlete's going to be up here. Do you mind if he sacks out here and just rests? And he's good at sweet-talking ladies. I'm
shy. All right.
And I showed up at her door, and she was expecting me, and she had a nice room for me and a couple pitchers of water and stuff. And then when the race started, people that run Boston, that beginning is wicked. I mean, it's big downhill, and we went through the first mile in 4 minutes and 33 seconds that day, and then Coach, I remember him telling me, Dickie, I don't want you to do any leading for like the first 10 miles. Just sit in the pack and let them do the work. And don't you remember kind of like that, Coach?
Yeah, right. Well, the one aspect of Boston was they get into this room. The foreign athletes, they're all looking at each other and they're giving them, and all that business. And I'm going, let's keep them away from that. And the nice little old woman, and it was the biggest thing, in the world. And you know what? I forgot to even send her anything. I would have sent her flowers, a fruit. I mean,
it's only 30
usually I'm a
years
good
late.
guy.
What the heck, Coach?
And I've always, and I never knew Mother Hubbard, where, if I could have, I would have done anything. But she was so sweet. She was giving them this, and then upstairs she'd put the music, downstairs and low.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
It was.
You found a good. You should have hooked up with her, Coach. So
get out of here.
As the race went on, now you got to remember this is 30 years ago, so there were no official aid stations on the course back then. You pretty much just got water from the spectators and everything. I remember running by people grabbing water, and I'd look at it, and if it was clear, I'd drink it. If it wasn't, I'd throw it on the ground. And back then, they really had no crowd control.
None.
As you could see on the video there, they were literally right on top of us, and it was probably the first really nice spring day that Boston had, so there were lots and lots of people out there. And so I just stayed in that pack with Bill Rogers and Alberto Salazar and some other people as the race continued to progress. And then as the miles went by, it just got less and less and less until we got to the fire station on Commonwealth Avenue there, just as you start into the hills. And it was just now down to Alberto and myself. And I remember Coach telling me before the race started, he says, Dickie, when you get to the hills, I want you to run those hills as hard as you can and the downhills even faster. And that's what I tried to do. I tried everything I could to break Alberto in that 4-mile stretch of the hills, and I couldn't shake him. He just was right on my back. And then coming down that big downhill on the other side, that's been the downfall of many a person that has led Boston at that point. That big downhill on the other side of Heartbreak can really just smack the living daylights out of you at that point. And I remember getting to the bottom, and Alberto was still there, and thinking, as I couldn't feel my legs anymore, and thinking, how am I going to run 5 more miles at the pace we were running or faster? But as bad as I was hurting, I knew Alberto had to be hurting just as bad. And so basically from there on into the finish area, I was doing everything I could at that point just to stay in front of him. And I would throw in a surge, and then I'd try to back it off, but then Alberto was right back there. And I could see by the way the sun was at the angle, I could see his shadow, so I didn't have to kind of glance back. And anytime I saw that shadow starting to move up on me, I'd make sure I'd pick up the pace a little bit. And that day I happened to wear, for the first time ever, I wore a New Balance white painter's cap. Coach knocked on my door the day before and said, Dickie, it's going to be warm and sunny tomorrow. I want you to wear this cap, cut a bunch of holes in the top of it, and if you can get ice on the course, put it in the hat and put it on your head. So I was wearing this white cap that day, and had never worn a cap before, and I didn't like the bill sticking in front of me, so I turned it up like this. I looked like a sailor man, and it basically, then with about 800, 900 meters to go, I had a little bit of just a slight advantage on Alberto, more than I'd had for most of the day, and I tried to throw it in a hard surge, and as I did, I got a big cramp, and that's what you see in the video. Alberto got away from me a little bit, but then fortunately I stepped in a pothole, and it jerked my leg and popped the knot out, and then I got my stride back. So you never want to give up, and I learned a lot that day. Those last 2 minutes, the race isn't over till it's over, right? And but I tell you, every time when I see that video, and I hear Bob LaBelle, that last guy that took over the announcing, and we're coming up, Hereford Street there, and he's basically at that point is giving the race to Alberto, but then all of a sudden he sees me coming around that corner, and then every time I hear Coach, Squires in the background, and you got to know this about, as we were coming down that last stretch to the sprint into the finish line, Coach is, screaming and yelling, and they're up on some scaffolding on the side of a building doing the announcing. Coach got so excited, he almost fell off, didn't you, Coach? I mean, he almost did. He almost fell off the gosh dang scaffolding. And
a woman saved my life.
Yeah.
What do you call it?
A news gal.
A news gal. She grabbed me. She's now a minister. But I mean, probably after the weekend with me, that was enough. I mean, she grabbed me and it held me back. I honestly thought I was going over.
He was going over.
We're on a painter's thing, and those are loose.
Yeah.
And I'm going, holy, and I'm, but.
But it was one of those races that, when I finished, I remember looking up and still seeing the clock reading 2:08, and then hearing I just got second place, and I thought, wait, I did not just run 2:08 and get second place. And over the years, people have asked me, Dickie, is there anything you could have done, or would there have been anything you would have done differently to finish in front of Alberto? And honestly, nothing. I always get choked about this. This man took a kid that, had trouble making the high school team, and I followed his plan to a T. He doesn't take enough credit for my success. I mean, seriously, I don't think I would have ever come close to getting where I did in running without Coach Squires. And but I ran that race exactly the way he wanted me to run it, the way I wanted me to run it, and the fact that I just happened to get out kicked at the end there, I was running. Al and I were running as hard as we could that day, and it's one of those races that even though it's been 30 years now next month, it still is so vivid in my mind. It really is. And every time I see that video, it still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And every time I see that video, I'm thinking, maybe this time I'm going to beat him. So, Joe, I'll let you take.
I was lucky enough to know Dick before the Duel in the Sun. And afterwards, after that race, that day I was in Boston, and everybody wanted to know Dick Beardsley. But in the lobby of the Sheraton, which was the headquarters at the time, Dick took the time to come over and give me a hug on the side of the room when all the entourage of media and so on was surrounding him, and I'll never forget that too. And Dick has become one of my great friends in the sport and in life in general, but more importantly, by far, he's become a great friend of the sport. And Dick has had his share of medical maladies, including yesterday spent in the emergency room of a Napa hospital. And so I couldn't pretend to tell a story, but Dick, if anybody asks you today, are you running tomorrow? Here's what you can tell them.
Yeah, I'll just show you these. No, I tell you what, I was getting ready to run Boston this year, 30th anniversary, and I didn't want to just run it. I wanted to be competitive, and for my age division, obviously, in that 55 to 59 age group. And I've had a couple of knee replacements, but I've been back training, and they were both from non-running problems, to be honest with you. And I'm not just saying that but it's true. And so anyhow, I was back training hard, and I unfortunately I fell back in December on a run and whacked my left knee, and anyhow I fractured my patella. So that's why I'm on the crutches. And then a week ago I had major reconstructive surgery on my left foot to correct some bones that were moving around. And then Thursday or yesterday, whenever we got in so late the other night, I can't remember, but I was I was in bed, and I had this foot surgery, and one of my toes had a big, long pin had to be put in it to help stabilize the bone, and then about that much of it was sticking out the end, and it would be pulled out 6 weeks later. Well, somehow the little rubber snubber came off, and it got caught on the sheets, and I woke up the next morning, and half of the gosh dang pin is sticking out of my foot. And I go to my wife, Joy, I go, hon, I think, what did I say? Oh, you're not going to want to hear what I have to say. She goes, okay, and she rolled back over to sleep. And then she rolled right back over and says, what is it? I said, remember that pin that was just barely sticking out of my toe? She goes, yeah. Well, I go, now it's really sticking out of my toe. So we call the doctor back and the surgeon, and he says, well, just cut the pin off and then try to bend it a little bit so it doesn't slide back down into your foot. Well, so Jill goes out to the local hardware store and buys a pair of pliers and a wire cutter, and we bring it up to the hotel room, and we can't cut the gosh dang wire. So we finally, I did something with Mary and her training group, and then we got to Napa yesterday, and so the doctor then back home said, you got to get to the emergency room. So we went there. Long story short, they took x-rays, and it was still quite a ways down into my foot, so they brought in the orthopedic guy, and he comes down with his special tools, and he clips off the end, and then he's working on bending it, and they're holding my foot down. All of a sudden, I thought it was the honking 4th of July. I mean, I'm seeing stars and stripes, and some words are coming out of Jill's voice, and all of a sudden I hear the doc going, uh-oh, and the gosh dang pin, when he tried to bend it, the whole thing came flying out of my foot, so now I don't have anything stabilized in my toe they just operated on, but it'll all work out. Unfortunately, we got to leave early tomorrow morning now, and because my orthopedic or the surgeon is going to see me bright and early Monday morning and figure out what he can do with it. But so that's why I'm on crutches. That's why I've got my foot all bandaged up because of the foot surgery. But no Boston this year, but hopefully it will happen again before 30 more years happens. Let's hope that.
Well, I was in Boston that day just goofing off, but Amby Burfoot was there working. And if you know Amby, you probably know him as the editor, or now former editor of Runner's World. But he could be doing this program himself. But we have to make Amby wait until 2018, because that'll be the 50th anniversary of his Boston Marathon win. But Amby, I won't pin you down on what exactly to talk about, but I'm sure you have lots of thoughts, both on your own Boston and the memories that Dick's description of his race brought up. So.
Thank you, Joe. One of the things I like to pride myself on is knowing when to sit down quickly, and on an afternoon when Coach Bill Squires has yet to deliver the meaning of life and the secret of the cycle and how to run a 2:08 marathon, I'm damn well not going to stand up here for very long. I was the Runner's World reporter of record with a friend on that day in 1982, and like Joe and Coach, was out there watching this race, which none of us will ever forget, because there has been nothing like it ever. I got a few historical documents here. I'm going to read just a couple of things very quickly. I'm going to begin by acknowledging someone who was here at the speaker at the podium when we began. Rich, the race director, is over there. Rich was... There is a reason why I am acknowledging Rich at this point, because he was the editor of the piece that was published in Runner's World in 1982 after the race. And some of you may not believe this, but there was no internet or Twitter or nothing in 1982, and Runner's World was sort of the magazine of record. And if you followed Runner's World and wanted to know about the 1982 Boston Marathon, if you followed running, you had to come to Runner's World to read the whole story right away. And what we did after the race was, it was obvious what this story was. There may have been, I don't know how many runners that day, 6,000. But in terms of covering the race, sorry for all of you who were in that race with Dick. There's a 1982 shirt out here somewhere, Dick. But there was a story about two guys. So after the race was over, I interviewed Dick. He probably doesn't even remember it. And Wish, who you know very well, interviewed Alberto. and that is what appeared in Runner's World a couple of months later. You can't really see it here. It's not a good spread. I'm going to give this to Dick. He will remember it. But I also have the typewritten manuscript of the article that Wish and I wrote, which was sent to Rich, who did the editing of it. And Dick has never seen that. You can't keep it, but I'll give you a copy. It's but now I'm going to read the unexpurgated version, which Rich edited. And this is not a bad on Rich story. This is a good on Rich story, because every writer, no matter who, we all need editors, right? That's what they're there for. They take out the stuff that we never want the world to see. Well, the article that never got published began with a few lines of poetry, which I don't remember, but I think it's more likely that I wrote this than Wish. In fact, there's no chance that Wish wrote these lines. It is an apology to Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. It's only 5 lines, so you will all survive it. And it goes like this. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of a midday run to Long Revere. 'Twas the 19th of April of '82. Nary a fan nearby the Prue will ever forget that day or year. No one's ever heard that before because Rich cut it. And I think it was probably a very, very good thing that he did, because I don't think mock poetry was ever going to be my forte. I really do not want to stand up here very long, mainly because I want to listen to the end of the program. But I want to make a point that hasn't been made perhaps quite strongly enough. There are a few gray beards in the room. Sorry about that, guys and ladies. But not all of you really can imagine what this battle was like in terms of David and Goliath, the 2 runners who raced against each other that day. Alberto was the invincible. He had set a life goal that he would never lose a marathon. He had won his first, I guess it was a couple, second one in world record time. There was nothing the man could not do. He could run cross country, he could run track, he could run marathons, he could run indoors. In fact, a little anecdote that you guys don't know, Coach and Dick, in the early 80s, after one of Alberto's indoor races in Madison Square Garden, I was there, and I sat in front of Alberto at a press conference afterwards. And you know Alberto, he can be kind of tough. And I said to him, you know, Al, not to say you're not the greatest runner the world has ever known, but you are now running road races and track races and cross-country races and marathons and indoor races. I mean, don't you think there's a chance maybe you're doing a little too much? Which Coach would have said yes to that. And he stared at me, and he stared at me, and he looked through me, and he said, you don't know who I am, or something like that. And I had known Alberto for a long time. But all of us, Dick thought he was invincible at one point. Alberto certainly thought he was invincible at one point. We all go through that. I always say the first smart runner hasn't been born yet. We all recreate the mistakes of all of those who have gone before us. There's plenty of collective wisdom, but none of us are smart enough to pick up on it. But I want to emphasize that Alberto was clearly the Goliath. We all knew he was going to win this race. He knew he was going to win this race. We all knew Dick was this great, talented, up-and-coming marathoner. But let's face it, he was a little skinny dairy farmer from Minnesota. That was not Dick. That was not Alberto. Alberto had been training with the coach when he was 14 years old, and then all the Oregon stories and all the international experience and all the NCAA championships and world records in the New York City Marathon. And there was absolutely, it was inconceivable that Dick Beardsley, no less anybody else, that Dick Beardsley could run with him over a full 26.2 miles of a marathon. So I'm going to sit down by transitioning this back to Dick and ask him the question, what the hell made you think you could run with Alberto?
Thanks, Amby. Thank you, Amby. That was great. I definitely got to get a copy of that. That would be neat. And I don't know why you cut that poem there, Rich. Thanks a lot. But You know, I'll tell you what. Going into that race, the reason I really did feel confident, but I was the kind of person that would not say that, you know, outright. And a lot of people said Alberto, oh, he was so cocky, and I had never thought he was. He was very confident, and there's a difference. You know, a cocky person says this, and that, but can't go out and produce the results. He could say it and go produce it. And but I you know, after, you know, working with Coach and how I'd progressed over the couple of years working with him, getting ready, and then dedicating my training to get ready for Boston, I really felt good. And I tell you what, so about a month before Boston, I ran, you know, my personal best in the 10K on a hilly course in Atlanta, Georgia, a road race. I ran like 29:12, and I was tickled pink.